Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Grace Rodriguez, Executive Director of Impact Hub Houston. We are a 501c3 nonprofit impact innovation incubator. Now, we work alongside over 100 impact hubs in over 56 countries around the world in supporting change makers and entrepreneurs who are working on solutions for some of our world's most pressing issues. You'll learn more about Impact Hub Houston as we go through the presentation, so let's just jump right into it. So first, we want to talk about the purpose of your pitch deck. We're talking right now about creating a compelling pitch deck, one that's going to engage investors, funders, potential customers, and clients. So the purpose of your pitch deck is really not to answer all of the possible questions that they might have. That's actually for your investor deck later on. The purpose of your pitch deck also is not to close immediate investment, because most serious investors or funders will not close from a cold pitch. They usually want to get to know you better if they're first meeting you. So the purpose of your pitch deck really is to share your vision and get people excited enough to engage with you and want to learn more. Within your pitch deck, especially if this is your first time pitching or if you're pivoting with your business and you want to, you need to change your pitch deck up a little bit in terms of your messaging and the kind of value that you're offering. You want to just give them enough information to pique their interest without confusing or overwhelming or distracting them from your mission. So really think about the purpose of your pitch deck as a way to give people a clear understanding of your vision, what you do, where you're going, how you'll get there, and then allowing them to see your potential and ask questions and maybe even offer you advice, because advice often leads to meetings and to new opportunities and eventually to funding. What we really want to start with is your value proposition. What people really want to know, and especially funders and investors, are: what's your idea? Why does it matter? How will you achieve it? And how will you grow it? Kevin Hale at Y Combinator, if you're not familiar with Y Combinator, it's one of the leading startup incubators or accelerators in the world. Kevin Hale says the average investor tries to poke holes in your idea and focuses on all the ways that it could go wrong. A good investor does it the other way around. They listen to what you say, and they use their wisdom and optimism to imagine what it would take for you to become a billion-dollar company. And they try to imagine all the rare events that would need to happen to achieve that. And then they pitch that path right back to you. So you don't really have to sell investors. A good, serious investor is going to see, because of their experience, they're going to see how many different ways you can actually grow your idea if it's a good idea and if you've engaged them well enough. And then they'll offer it back to you, offer all those different paths back to you. So if you find that an investor is just saying, this won't work because of this won't work because of that, and they're not offering you ideas or opportunities or ways to work around that, they're probably not the right investor for you. And it indicates that it's probably time to move on or find somebody else who would be the right fit. Because keep in mind that the investor or funder that you're looking for is one that you want to continue working with through the extent of your company, through the extent of development of the solution, and you want to make sure that's a really good relationship. A lot of times investors, especially angels and venture capitalists, will call it's kind of like a marriage, or it's kind of like dating. You want to make sure that you pick the right one because you're going to be with them for a long time. And if you think about what the investor is thinking about, put on their hat, step in their shoes, what they're really thinking is, does this idea really excite me? Do I understand it? And is this person a good founder? Do they have a good team? And do I want to work with them? Because, just like I was saying that it's important for you to think about the kind of investor that you want to be married with for the long term, the investor is also thinking, do I want to be working with this entrepreneur for the long term, or is it going to be difficult? Because if I'm going to deploy money into their company and I want the company to grow so I can see a return on that investment, I want to make sure that they'll listen, that they're coachable, that they're willing to push back if they know that they have data and they believe in their team. They want to make sure that it's going to be a good relationship as well. So with that, let's get to that baseline of a value proposition. What do you say when someone asks you, what do you do? And whenever you go to one of these networking events, people will always ask, what do you do? And you can answer for yourself or for your company. So for example, depending on the audience, I myself will say, I help do-gooders do greater. And you might have seen that on my social media. Or when I'm talking about Impact Hub, I'll say, we empower entrepreneurs to create the change they wish to see in the world. And if you want to drop that in the chat below as well, please answer that. What do you do? And how do you answer that right now? And if you find it hard to come up with a short sentence, because sometimes people will try to put in all the features, all the services, all the products that they offer into that one statement, here's an exercise that might help you make it more clear and succinct, because clear and succinct is what helps people remember your statement. I've had so many people over the years come back to me and say, I love your tagline. I love I help do-gooders do greater. And that means because it's memorable, right? It's catchy, it's memorable. So you want to make sure that people can remember that, because when they introduce you, they will actually use that often to introduce you. So here's the exercise. First, start with who. Who benefits from what you do? And I'll use the word offer from now on to represent both whether you're providing a product or a service. This is your offer. Who is the ideal customer for your offer? And keep in mind that your beneficiary and your customer may be the same group of people, or they may not. So for many impact innovators or for many social enterprises, the beneficiary is often not the same as the person who's going to pay you or the customer, right? So beneficiary might be from a low income or a disadvantaged population, whereas the customer who's actually paying you might be a foundation or a corporate sponsor who is willing to invest in supporting that group. So if they are different groups, you can create different value propositions for each of those groups, and then use whichever statement is appropriate for the audience that you're pitching to. So let's say if you have a beneficiary group that is also able to pay for your product or service or for your offer, and then you have a customer group that is willing to pay even more to help subsidize you delivering that, then make sure that you have a different value proposition when you pitch your offer to them. So for example, for Impact Hub Houston, our target customers and beneficiaries are change makers who want to solve problems in their communities. And then we have a different value proposition when we're going to corporate sponsors. And our target customers in the corporate enterprise area are companies that want to support people who are in low income or historically disadvantaged or historically underserved communities. And then secondly, think about what are you doing to help your target customer or beneficiary. So what kind of process or end state will your offer help them experience? And for example, Impact Hub Houston helps diverse changemakers get the community, resources, and skills they need to become successful entrepreneurs. So that's the end state. We want them to become successful entrepreneurs. And you could be helping real estate developers build more healthy and prosperous buildings. Like I see David is in the audience with McMac CX. You could also be helping Black business owners reach new customers and expand into new markets. So really think about who are you helping to do what. And then finally, what is your why? And why are you ultimately pursuing this endeavor? This is where you can highlight your vision and think about what the world would look like if and when you succeed. So for example, Impact Hub Houston helps diverse changemakers get the community, resources, and skills they need to become successful entrepreneurs so that they can become economically resilient, improve their communities, and build a more just and sustainable world. So again, Impact Hub Houston helps who? Diverse changemakers do what? Get the community, resources, and skills they need to become successful entrepreneurs. Why? So they can become economically resilient, improve their communities, and build a more just and sustainable world. So, using David's example, you could be helping real estate developers build more healthy and prosperous buildings so that they can provide safe and joyful places for people to live, work, and play. And for you, who are you helping to do what and why? So please, feel free to take a stab at it, share your own value proposition in the chat, or post it on your social media and see how it resonates with your audience, see how it resonates with your community. Get feedback from your community and they're going to help you refine your value proposition. So some common mistakes for pitch decks that make them less compelling are having too many slides or having very verbose, very text-heavy slides. Even when there are a lot of words on a slide, people's eyes tend to glaze over. I've seen this at a lot of pitch competitions where judges will just start to zone out because there's just too much to read, and that having to read that is competing with them trying to listen to you at the same time. So you don't want too much text on your slides. Also including assumptions that you can't back up with data and evidence. Whenever people say that this is a $1 billion market, we're going to reach 1 billion people, oftentimes it will actually challenge the audience, the investor, funder, or your potential customer were thinking, how are they really going to do this? You know, everybody says that they can do that. How are they really going to do this? And now you've sown seeds of doubt about your solution. So make sure you only have assumptions that you can back up with data and evidence. Another common mistake is trying to boil the ocean, trying to show how you're going to do everything for everybody. Often funders want to see how you're going to help a specific market so that you can grow into other markets, because you need to do one thing successfully and effectively before you can grow into other things. Another common mistake, unfortunately, is belittling competitors. Trying to make yourself seem better than a competitor by making them seem worse often doesn't speak well to your character. And again, remember, investors are looking for people they want to work with. So they want to make sure that the people they're working with are ethical and have, you know, some integrity and character. And that goes into the last mistake, arrogance. Assuming that you know more than everybody else, especially the people that you're pitching to and that you want to fund you and invest in you, is not a good strategy. Being humble and seeking their advice and their empathy also in what you're trying to do, because startups are hard, it's a better strategy to make sure that they're engaged and that they want to actually help you with their expertise, their network, and their money. So some easy solutions to those common mistakes: stick to 10 to 12 slides if you can. You can always have some extra slides in your back pocket on hold with more information when you start to understand what kind of questions you'll be asked, and then you can provide more data on that. But when you're initially pitching, try to stick to 10 to 12 slides in the main part of the pitch, and then focus just on one key point on each slide so that they're not distracted from anything else. Their mind doesn't wander, they're listening and focused on you. Include only points that you can back with data and evidence again. Provide a roadmap that shows how you'll establish a beachhead market and then build momentum. So you're focused on that one thing. Remember, don't try to boil the ocean. Focus on a beachhead market and then show how you'll grow. And we'll go into that in more depth later on in this presentation. Remember that you want their advice and not their scorn, and hopefully that'll help keep you humble and avoid that arrogance. And making sure that you compare and contrast features and benefits fairly against your competitors will show that you recognize what they're good at, but you can also show what you're better at or what you differentiate on in a more objective way. And Guy Kawasaki, who wrote The Art of the Start, he has a 10-20-30 rule of PowerPoint, which you might try to follow. It's 10 slides, 20 minutes to present all 10 of those slides, and then any text that's on each of those slides will be in 30-point font. And that 30-point font is really just to get people to focus on that key point, and then make sure that you don't include a lot of other text in it. But you don't have to follow that. It's not a hard and fast rule. It's just kind of a guide. So the pitch deck outline, what you want to include is to make sure that you have your vision and value proposition, the problem that you're trying to solve, the solution that you're trying to offer, the revenue that you'll create, the opportunity that you have ahead of you, the competition that you're against, how you'll go to market and how you'll outcompete, and then the roadmap of development, so how you envision your future, the financials and forecasts, the data, basically, and evidence that will show how you will be able to achieve what is on your roadmap, you and your team, and the expertise that you have that will help make that happen, and then your ask for the funder or for the audience, whether it's a customer, so ask for the deal. And so on the pitch deck outline that's included in the template that I'll be sharing later, it has what I just said spelled out so you can remember it. So first, the title slide. It's a succinct introduction to your vision and your value proposition. Keep it short and memorable because you want that to stick in people's heads. And for the purposes of this workshop, we'll use the Airbnb pitch deck that Brian, Joe, and Nathan used to raise their $600,000 seed round. This was the first time they went out for investment, and they raised $600,000 with this. They had 14 slides, which I'll be condensing into about 10 here to show you how you can tighten up and focus your own decks. And so first, the title slide. It checks 2 of the 3 requirements. It has a logo and brand, and it has a tagline. They could have added their purpose at the bottom, but you'll see their purpose later on. And then next, the problem. Define the real problem or the need that you're solving and for whom. How is your beneficiary currently addressing the problem? And why is that not working? You can also discuss when you're presenting the slide who else is already doing this, what they're lacking or doing wrong as part of the problem. And so for an example, for Airbnb, price is an important concern for customers who are booking travel online. Hotels leave you disconnected from the city and its culture. They feel kind of cold. And so they want to make sure that they're helping people get more culture, get more connected to a community. They want to make sure it's affordable, and they want to make sure it's easy, right? So when you think about here are the problems, leads directly into what are you offering? What is the solution? And how is it better than what your target customer is already doing or using? If you can come up with 3 key benefits that you have, that will also help make it memorable and compelling for people, because then it's clear that what you're delivering is actually helping the customer beneficiary that you're trying to help. So here, Airbnb is very succinct and clear, which implies that the solution and value proposition they're offering are easy for anyone, including funders, to understand. Their platform helps you save money, make money, and share culture. Funders mostly care about the first 2, obviously, but the share culture part is really critical when you're a social entrepreneur, because that is the part that makes it sticky. That's the part that engages community and helps you grow your business. And with making these very simple, bold statements and keeping it just to 3, makes sure that you are positioning yourself very clearly in your audience's mind as to what you stand for and what you're trying to do. They also included pictures of their products. So if you haven't seen Airbnb's early iterations, that's what it looked like. It was just like a kind of a basic website, which is as pretty as it is now. So it gives you hope that there's always room for improvement, a constant iteration when you're developing a tech platform especially. So next, share your business and revenue model. You talked about what you're trying to solve, the problem, how you're trying to solve it, the solution, and now how are you going to make money doing this? So what is your business and revenue model? This is an easy to follow calculation for how you're going to make money. You can show this is how many customers, or this is how our target customers will pay this amount every month or every year, and this is how we're going to make money. And this is also where if you have beneficiaries versus customers, you can show that this is how many customers are paying people that will need to pay this much in order to benefit this many people too. So make sure that you also include how many people that's going to benefit, because then it shows how much impact you're also going to help create. And Airbnb did that with showing that they take a 10% commission on each transaction of, let's see, in an $84 million market, which they show later on, with the average fee being $25. Well, anyway, it will go to $2.1 billion in revenue that's projected by 2011. So they can show exactly how they get to it. It's reached logically and simply by taking a cut of each reasonably priced transaction. So they're not going to the high end of each transaction where people are renting out, for instance, 7-bedroom homes. $70 per night for a room is okay compared to most hotels. Okay, so after you've talked about how you'll make money, you can talk about how big is the actual opportunity for you. And that goes into these 3 terms you might have heard before: your total available market, or TAM, which is all of the people who are in this universe. So when you're talking about people who travel, that is all of the people for Airbnb. This is all of the people who travel. The next is SAM, your serviceable addressable market. So how much of that market can you serve and effectively address? So out of the total market of travelers, you can serve the people who care about affordable travel and who want to be connected to the culture of that community that they're traveling to. And then the SOM, or serviceable obtainable market, is the portion of that market that you can effectively reach. So who's actually going to adopt what you're doing? Because you might be able to promote or market yourself, your offer to all of the people who are budget travelers who want to be connected to a community, but how much can you actually capture? Because you have to consider who's going to use digital platforms to do booking, who's going to want to stay at other people's homes. So the obtainable market actually shrinks a little bit more depending on, as you get really focused on who your target market is and what they want to achieve, and then how you can capture them, how you and your team can capture them. And that can be without an injection of capital, without increasing capacity. This is what we can achieve now. This is how Airbnb showed how big the opportunity is by including the market validation. They showed that there are 666,000 people who were using couchsurfing.com at that time. So there were people who were willing to stay at other people's homes and be connected to a community or people in that area. They showed that the market size and saying this is how many people are actually booking trips online. This is how many people are in that budget travel group. And this is how many people would take trips through Airbnb based on the data that they saw on Couchsurfing. And then behind this, and the right hand side of the market validation slide, is how many people were booking stays through Craigslist at that time. So that 84 million is their SOM, their serviceable obtainable market. And then next, so now you've shown them how big the opportunity is, you can see how many people are in that space by showing your competition. So where do you exist in this larger overall market space? What are your key differentiators and advantages? When you're thinking about this 2x2 matrix, or this matrix, think about what separates you from the others. So your first differentiator could be that you are more cost effective and travelers can afford you. And then your second differentiator could be that you're more connected to communities, or that you have more users on your platform. And so if you think about the two ways that you can win within a market, this positions you to be in that upper right hand side as we are the leading offer for this space. And you can see that's what Airbnb did here, where they said that they're more affordable and that they provide online transactions, which makes them more accessible to people who are using the internet to book travel. They also listed some competitive advantages. So, the slide shows a dynamic market with actors in all the different segments. And so it shows a healthy competitive landscape. And a lot of times people want to show that they're the only ones, or that they're the first going into a market. But really, funders want to see who else has tried this, because they want to see who you can learn from as to what mistakes that they've made, why they didn't work as well. And that's to your benefit. You actually want a healthy and competitive marketplace. If you are truly innovative and nobody else is doing something similar to you, you can also think about how other people are addressing the problem currently as a competitor. So let's say if you're going into a market where there isn't public transportation and people don't have cars, and you want to figure out how you can get somebody from point A to point B, right now they're walking. So walking is actually one of your competitors. Whatever people are doing to get from point A to point B, that is actually your competitor, because changing behavior is just as hard for what people are currently doing, even if they're not paying to do it. So now that you've shown how you differentiate, you can show how you're going to go to market, how you're going to make sure that you capture more market share. This is where you explain how you'll rise above your competitors and demonstrate your current traction. So include your development timeline and your milestones to date. And you think about your growth metrics. These are really key, especially at early stage. And your growth metrics may not be large. You might not be making hundreds of thousands of dollars when you pitch this, but Airbnb wasn't also. As long as you can show growth, let's say for Impact Up Houston, going from 1 member to 5 members within a month is really good. That's 5x of growth. So going from 1 to 3, 1 to 5, 1 to 10 is still really important in terms of what kind of metrics that you share with potential funders, but because it shows that people are actually adopting what you do. And then talking about where your customers currently are and what channel partners you'll use to reach them is also important, so people can see that you have a marketing strategy, you have a promotion strategy, you have thought about, and you know how you're going to reach those potential customers and beneficiaries. So Airbnb's slide on this, their go-to-market strategy wasn't very strong. They talked about events and alternatives, and it looked a little bit more like wishful thinking if you think back when they pitched this in 2008. So, going back to the previous one, a market plan must outline really initiatives, market segments, and milestones that you aim to achieve in whatever steps over however many years, because it helps potential funders really wrap their minds around the numbers, basically. And it also shows them you've done your diligence. So once you've discussed how you'll get ahead, then discuss how you'll stay ahead. Your roadmap is where you show how you'll evolve, right? And how will you continue to develop your offer and your model to differentiate from others in the space, because others will also emerge in the space. New competitors will emerge, or new alternatives will emerge, and competitors will also pivot and adapt to try to gain more market share. So how will you evolve in order to stay relevant, to continue to gain market share in your serviceable, obtainable market, and then the addressable market? And how will you evolve to continue to create and scale your impact? You can also highlight your press or partnerships or testimonials to show that your roadmap is directionally right for your vision. So this is more of like a strategic directional overview. And again, you may pivot or evolve as things happen. You might have other ancillary products or services that you want to add to it. But what is the core piece of your offer that you want to highlight that's going to evolve and grow? Airbnb, again, didn't have that much to start with when they started pitching with this deck. But they did have press clippings and they did have some user testimonials, and that helped people show that yes, there is a demand for this kind of service, that there is adoption for it, and that there's a lot of buzz around it. So that for them to continue going down the route of trying to offer a place to stay that's connected to a community, that is affordable, that's in other people's homes, has the opportunity to grow. And then after you've given them the vision, talk about the numbers, your financials, your current financials, and then your forecast for that. So if you can, include 3 to 5 years of financial projections and mention your key and critical assumptions in your model of expenses, your customer conversion, and your market penetration. And so when I talk about key and critical assumptions, that could be, assuming that we continue to grow, assuming that the pandemic goes away, for instance, at this current time, assuming that our marketing efforts succeed and that we have an injection of capital and are able to hire more people. Make sure that you mention those assumptions so that people understand, okay, you have thought through these things, and these numbers are based on actual data or at least trending data. And so for those of you who aren't familiar with these acronyms, MRR is monthly recurring revenue, or how much revenue you gain every month. ARR is annual recurring revenue, how much revenue you have every year. And then GMV is gross merchandise value. So for anybody who's developing a platform for other people to sell their own offers, their products and services, gross merchandise value is the total value of merchandise sold over a given period of time through a customer-to-customer exchange site. So like Airbnb, where you have somebody who is selling their home basically, or leasing their home to another customer. And so it's a measure of that kind of a platform. And then MOM growth is month over month growth. So Airbnb didn't have a proper financials and forecast slide, but I found one with the data from LinkedIn's Series B raise. It was for $10 million in 2004. And their original slide was primarily text, but you can see here their projections, their numbers showed how, based on their historical data, they were on track to grow and capture more market share. And this can help lay the foundation for your ask later. And it also helps people, especially funders, see the opportunity for you to create more impact in terms of the total users or beneficiaries that you'll be helping, how much revenue you'll get. So it's so it helps them see what their potential return on investment would be. And then highlight your key team members and their prior positions, successes, and domain expertise. Like really, again, thinking about a funder wants to know, is this a good founder? Do they have a good team? Are they the ones that can take this to the culmination of their roadmap and help the organization grow, execute on the offer properly, and do I want to work with them? Demonstrate that relevant experience, the character. I've seen decks where people have something fun about their founders, and that's also been points of engagement for potential investors because, or especially when you go to pitch competitions, if you have something fun, like if I saw that somebody was a knitter, liked to knit, I would be excited about that. And I would love to talk to that person about their business because we have something in common. So sometimes having something fun in addition to showcasing their expertise or something that a lot of people might not know might also open up another area of conversation that will help people understand, okay, these are creative people. They might be more resilient if they're creative because whatever comes their way, they'll be able to create a new way out of it. And again, going back to Airbnb, Nathan's was actually the best, I think, in terms of showcasing the founders and showcasing the team. You immediately trust his ability to execute and perform because he talked about what he's done. He talked about his experiences and his accomplishments versus just relying on his degree. And then finally, the ask. State how much capital you are raising and with what general terms. So if you're looking for angel or venture capital investment, you can talk about the kind of equity that you're providing. Are you providing this through a convertible note or a safe? What is the timing of your capital raise? So also when you're going to close, do you have existing and notable investors? And if so, then ask for their permission and then include them, or funders. So if you have logos of the different companies or different foundations that have granted you money, that's also helpful because it shows that other people will believe in it, they trust you, and that they have faith in your vision and your ability to execute. And then also share your key uses of funds. So you can state the the dollar amount or a percentage of the total raise. You could say for personnel, it's going to be 10% of our total raise, or you can say this is exactly how much we need to raise to be able to afford the type of personnel we need to grow. If you look at Airbnbs, they asked for 12 months of financing to reach 80,000 transactions on the platform, which would require a 500,000 angel round, and that would lead to 80,000 trips, potential bookings with Airbnb, and that will lead to this much revenue to help them sustain and grow. And then end obviously with your thank you slide, with your logo, your tagline, and how they can contact you. Because again, remember that the goal of your pitch deck is to get potential funder or customer client engaged, and you want them to ask you questions. You want them to ask you for another meeting so that they can dive deeper, and that you can present your investor deck with more financials and more details, and then build that relationship with them. So with that, here's our thank you slide, and happy to answer any questions now.
Thank you, Grace. So we actually have a couple of questions in the chat. The first is from Jana. She asked, when we were speaking to the revenue model slide, she's asking, if you have multiple revenue models, is it okay to show them all? Or what is the best way to show multiple revenue models?
It depends on how many, right? So don't go over 3, because if you have too many, it looks like you are trying to do too much at the same time. And depending on your capacity, so let's say if you have a 100-person company and you have 10 different sources of revenue, at least you have departments that can execute on what it takes to gain that revenue. But if you have a small team, especially for startups, I mean, honestly, having more than one revenue model at the beginning would raise a red flag for some potential funders. Focusing on whichever one has the most likelihood of delivering the greatest revenue, delivering the greatest growth to your company, and delivering the greatest impact if you're a social enterprise, that would be the one that I would focus on. And you can also say it, anecdotally as you're pitching this. So let's say this deck is for a pitch competition or for your first meeting with a funder, and not one that you're going to hand out to everybody, or not one that you're going to post online. For that, then keep it to the key one, and then discuss, we can also gain revenue from this, and this, but we want to focus on this because we see the potential for growth and the potential for success in this one first as being higher, as it's 80% versus the other ones. And then those are in our back pocket when we need to, try to bolster any kind of revenue shortages that we have. If it's something that you want to post online and you want to show that we have all of these multiple sources of revenue because you don't know who's going to be looking at it, then include maybe a couple of different slides that are focused on which key demographic, again, if it's a different type of customer or a different beneficiary, and then show how the revenue model relates to each group.
Great, thank you. Jana, does that clear it up for you, or do you have a follow-up?
No, that's great, thank you.
Awesome. And so then the next question that we have, and then before I read that one, if you do have other questions, please go ahead and drop them into the chat. This one's from Marilyn. Marilyn's asking, I believe it was for the slide directly after this on your opportunity. If you have both products and services, how do you profile a slide like this?
As long as you're addressing the same market, so it's not a product for one group of people and a service for another group of people, it's still within the same market, right? So when you're talking about your serviceable, obtainable market, it would still be the same. You lump it all into the same group of people.
Marilyn, I saw that you also just posted another question I feel like is relevant for a lot of the folks on the call right now, because for many, you might not even have started doing pitch presentations. And so it seems like you have a question on what to highlight, where to start. If you want to unmute yourself, please go ahead.
Hello, everybody. This was excellent. This is Marilyn Harris. I'm with the Women Veterans Business Center. We're a local 501c3 nonprofit, basically a grassroots organization that's been around for several years, right at 10 years. And for the first time, we are pitching for a large amount of money. We've self-funded, we receive small donations, but the times have changed. Our primary angel investor passed last October. And so we find ourselves in this situation. Like I said, we have previously self-funded. So how do we, I think a better word to use is market ourselves having had this experience, number one, and then based on our offerings, I have lots of questions about what exactly do we highlight in our pitch. Thank you.
Can you describe more of what you do offer and
Sure.
who you're helping?
Yes, we are a educational charity. Our mission is to educate and empower women veterans and actually the entire military family, but we focus on women veterans to start and grow professional careers and wealth generating professional careers and veteran owned businesses. And so our competitive advantage is that we are veterans and we know the intricacies of veteran entrepreneurship from our own experiences. And so there are many, many other organizations out here that we partner with because women veterans have choices to go to wherever they want to. However, we are veterans. We've been on that road less traveled, and we know the backstories of these women. A lot of women veterans have had unique stories as related to their military service. And, we can relate and we can do more than just help them with their businesses proper. We can help them navigate the post military life, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But our key offerings are training in the area of business information and resources.
You're going a lot into detail in terms of your offer, and succinctly, it seems like at what you said at the end or towards the end would be how I would pitch what you do is we help veterans transition to civilian life and succeed, and thrive, and then how you achieve that. You can go into the features and benefits of your organization later on, but that is the key to me, or why I would be interested in supporting you, investing in you, donating to you, is because you're helping veterans transition to civilian life and thrive. And then especially if you're saying you're helping women veterans, even bonus because I'm a woman, so I want to help more women succeed, especially in our region, and especially diverse women too. So, I focus on that and then umbrella everything underneath that. And when you're talking about your opportunity, your business revenue model, your problem solution. So let's say if we went back through that, the problem is female veterans don't have support when they're here. Female veterans need childcare because they're trying to manage a lot of different things and also re-enter the workforce. They need skills. They need new training to be able to get the skills that the marketplace now needs from them. And so let's say if those were the problems that you're trying to help them with, our solution is we provide this kind of training, we provide this kind of connection with organizations that can provide healthcare, childcare, other kind of support services, and we provide another thing, right? So these are the types of benefits that you're providing. And then I would go into and how we make sure that this is sustainable, that this work is sustainable. Maybe there's a small fee, but really we are looking for grants and corporate sponsors for this program. So let's say our average, and I'm basing this off Impact Hub Houston's numbers. Let's say that Impact Hub Houston is looking for an average engagement from a corporate sponsor at $5,000, right? So let's say we're looking for 5 companies at $5,000 to sponsor a weekend boot camp for women veterans that help them get the social emotional and digital literacy skills so that they can successfully re-enter the workforce. That's one part of it, and then another part of revenue model could be, and we're also asking women veterans to contribute X amount, and whether that's in kind. So in kind services could be volunteer to help us reach more people. It could be marketing services, so that whatever that kind of other revenue model, especially for nonprofits or social enterprises, if you have in kind donations that help you increase capacity, you can also include that because it shows that you're being resourceful, and that's one of the reasons why you're keeping overhead low. For nonprofits, we understand that when you're looking at foundations, they want to make sure you keep overhead low so that more funding goes into the delivery of services. So you can show how you are doing that through these in-kind donations, because then the funder can see, well, shoot, if I wanted to help, I should provide funding to pay those people to do that, because then you could have more veteran women actually getting paid to do these services. You're creating jobs, you're helping create jobs. So yes, I would make sure that you include that in your revenue model too. And again, like those were 2 things, right? You can add a third thing, but again, try not to go over 3 if possible.
That's awesome, Grace. That helps a lot.
Oh, good, good. Are there any other questions? Or anybody else want to share one of the problems or challenges they're facing right now in terms of fundraising?
Hi, Grace. This is Jonna. I have I guess, a question. We are pre-revenue and not actively looking for like traditional VC funding. So right now it's bootstrapped, but a lot of the programs, accelerators, incubators that we apply to are looking for a pitch deck. I just want to make sure that we are focusing on the right things in the pitch deck to show that we are making the right traction and to look like a viable company, because it is different than, a company that's been around a while. So if you could help with that.
Yeah. So you can't, instead of, on your go-to market strategy, instead of having how much has been raised, you can talk about how much you've put in terms of equity, sweat equity, what the in-kind or what the cash value of that would be, and say this is bootstrapped so far, and say it's $250,000 that we've put into this in terms of my volunteer time, full time for 1 year, or two people's volunteer time, for a full year, and then how much maybe that you've also given into that. So put that all into one lump sum, and then say this is how much we've bootstrapped so far, and then include some of the milestones that you've made. So maybe you've helped X number of people, right? So you've helped 10 people, you plan to help 30 people next quarter, and so on. So, and just show how you're going to continue to achieve new and different milestones too. It doesn't necessarily have to be just the number of people that you help, but how many more organizations you engage in the work that you're doing. So
Okay.
when you're, instead of thinking about dollar signs, think about impact. Just
Okay.
change that into impact so that you can show that too. But yeah, make sure that you can show with an injection of capital, this is how much more impact we could actually scale this to. Or without an injection of capital, you can use this in your ask when you close. Without an injection of capital, all of this goes away. Make people feel a loss. If they feel a loss, they're more likely to say, I don't want to lose that.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question about the graphics. Should you be pretty conservative? I did see the earlier slide that talked about the font and whatnot, but should we put, since we're an existing organization, should we put some of our own pictures on the slide deck, or should we just put animated pictures or stock photos? And what message should our graphics send to the listeners of our
question. Yeah. So the design of your deck is really important. And one of the things it was interesting when I was going through the Airbnb deck and looked at how other venture capitalists had broke it down, people said it felt welcoming, right? Like it didn't feel like a hard, cold kind of brand. It seemed like warm and inviting. So the kind of graphics and the design that you use is really important in communicating that. And I also just wanted to make sure that I shared with you the link for the pitch deck template that you can copy. When you go here, it gives you some of the information on how to use it, again, what should go into it, and then how to make a copy of it. So you'd go to File, make a copy of the entire presentation, and then just rename it and change everything on it. And what I would normally recommend is use as many photos of the people that you're helping, your beneficiaries, happy customers, happy funders, happy collaborators in your deck as possible. So one of the things that we have done with Impact Hub's decks is, if you look at the beginning slide, has an image of a gentleman who spoke at the Houston Innovation Summit a couple of years ago. This was at the Lou Idea Lab. And normally this picture would actually take up the whole slide in the same way that the last slide does. But I wanted to make sure that everybody could read it. So we tend to use large pictures in the background so that people can feel more connected to the people on our team, and our volunteers, our mentors, our speakers, and our community and our members. We want to make sure that people feel like there's a community. And so for nonprofits and social enterprises, the more that you can show how you're tied to community and kind of showcase the culture that you're creating and the impact that you're having, the more compelling your deck is. So I definitely recommend, if you can, and especially if you have, make sure that you get permission from the people who are in the photos to be able to use those photos. But if not, if you can find stock images that aren't used commonly, that still feel like people in your organization, like they are people in your organization or people in your community, that's better. I've seen a lot of decks where people have stock photos of very diverse groups of people in their decks and saying that they care about diversity, but then you look at their team and their advisors and it's not as diverse as the people in their stock photos. So to me, it just shows like, it indicates to me, if I were, interested in investing in them, that they're not demonstrating their commitment to diversity in their organization itself, just in their marketing materials. And that would make me question a lot of things, right? That would be a lot of red flags for me. So the more accurate, like the more authentic the images are, the better. And second, if you can find images that are as close to authentic images as possible, the better. If you have graphics of your website or of your marketing materials so people can see what you're putting out into the world, that's also helpful. So let's say if your primary offer is actually events or training programs or workshops, and you have flyers for those, let people see that. And if on your flyers you have, again, pictures of people who have attended previous workshops, that's helpful. But at least give people a feel of what your organization or your company is about.
You are a great pitch instructional presenter, Grace.
Oh, thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you so much.
So Grace, that brings us up to, we're at 1 p.m. now. I don't see any other questions in the chat, but if you do have follow-up questions, I'm sure you can connect with Grace after. Can you give us just some next steps, Grace?
Next steps. Okay, so make sure again that you follow us on social media. If you can, subscribe to our newsletter and to get updates on more workshops coming ahead. If you think that we can help you in some way, consider signing up for Accelerate membership to Impact Hub Houston, and that's where you'd get one-to-one mentorship. As a community member, you can participate in our group mentorship sessions. So you would actually get peers who are going through the same thing you are, helping you with helping you work through what your challenges currently are. But if you apply for Accelerate membership, we're happy to help you connect with not just Michelle and myself, but with other mentors from our community who can give you one-to-one advice, especially if you're trying to fundraise right now. And thank you, Michelle, for hosting the chat and for popping in all of those resources. Thank you all for joining us. And if you have any more questions, feel free to email me or reach out on social media.
Wonderful. Thanks, Grace. Thank you, everyone.